All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Chelmsford Conservation Commission meeting. My name is Carl Bischoff. I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission. This meeting is being recorded, and we are on Zoom, I believe, tonight. So we're going to be monitoring that closely, I'm sure. And so your comments, and we will have a session on open session in a moment. So we have a good agenda here. I know we have at least one suggested continuation, which we'll get to on the agenda. Anything else that we want to switch around, or anything else? Just okay. So we'll follow that agenda. Let's get started. First of all, are there any open citizen concerns not on the agenda? Anything that anyone wants to bring up? I see nothing on the Zoom. Okay. So the first thing under the first bullet here is the 221 Littleton Road enforcement order. David, would you like to set that up before we get into the discussion?
Sure. So if the commission recalls that the commission issued an enforcement order which included a cease and desist for the storage of some oil delivery trucks. I think it was three or four, something like that, and plus a couple of similar vehicles. So the commission issued an enforcement order saying, requiring that they be removed from the property, which they have been. And then if the owner wants to, file an RDA for approval of the storage. So that has not been done yet. Mr. Ringwald from GPR, who's representing the owners, who are also here tonight, is here to really try and get a better sense of the commissioner tonight, whether it should be just an RDA, which is implied a negative determination, or a notice of intent. So from here, I'll turn it over to Bruce.
And the concern we had was that this was right adjacent to a wetland.
Right. Yes.
Very close
to a wetland.
Yep. Okay. So you're Mr.
Good evening. Bruce Ringwald.
Bruce, yep, come right up, yep, and
So I don't have anything to project on screen, Bruce. You didn't email me a plan.
Yeah, I don't
please,
have anything.
give us your name again.
Yeah,
and,
certainly.
Yep.
Good evening. Bruce Ringwald from Goldsmith Preston Ringwald, GPR for short, representing the owners this evening. This is Robert and Lisa Napolitano, right?
Hello.
For the property at 221 Littleton Road, which Dave just made reference to. I don't have a plan up for you to look at. Hopefully you're familiar with the site and its location. This is an existing building with an existing paved area both on the left and the right as you're looking at the building. That would be the east and the west. And there is wetlands on the right side, the east side, running the length of the property down towards 495. I'm hoping that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding, and maybe a misunderstanding all the way around. The applicants, before they purchased the property, met with their attorney, did their due diligence relative to whether the use is permissible, the use being a retail use. The Napolitanos deliver fuel. And I know when you see the trucks and they say oil on the side of them, we think of other things, a fueling station or whatnot. There's no fueling station here on this property, no proposal to have a fueling station. This is simply empty trucks that are being parked there. There's 3 of them. There's one employee, Mr. Napolitano himself. He has multiple trucks because they're not always working. Sometimes you have one that breaks down, you have to have another one available. His business is going from the property. He has set clients. He's had these clients for a long time. He goes to a distribution facility. He picks up fuel at the distribution facility and takes it to the customers, delivers the fuel, comes back with an empty truck or near empty truck and parks it. And that's the plan. That's the use. Under the Wetlands Protection Act, we're not creating any new paved surface. We're not creating any new areas. We're not doing any disturbance to the wetlands, the resource areas, or the buffer zones as proposed or as is there. You know, it was one use to another use. So under the Wetlands Protection Act, I see no area of why there'd be a call. I do understand driving by and seeing trucks that say oil and, you know, having a concern from that standpoint. Looking through your bylaw, I don't see a real catch-all area as well for this. So let's just say that there is one, and let's have a discussion about that. We have 3 trucks that would be there, and plus his car. These trucks are obviously not daily drivers. You're not taking this thing to go pick up your groceries. So the trucks want to have a place to stay and to be parked. It is in the buffer zone, but it's an existing parking lot in the buffer zone. Just as the apartment facility next door has a very large parking lot in the buffer zone. There is no proposal to change the surface. When he first got there, it was suggested to him that he park on the right-hand, eastern side of the building so that the trucks weren't in view of the apartments. And not a good suggestion because obviously that's closer to your wetlands. So we don't want to do that. What we prefer to do would be to park the trucks on the left side of the building. Rob, if I may use his first name, is trained in, cleanups because that's his job. He's picking up fuel and delivering fuel. So if there's a spill, he's got to be ready and know what the deal is on that. To that end, each truck has a spill kit. To that end, the property has a spill kit within it itself. We've taken a quick look at the property. From the standpoint, we were able to take a look at a plan. There was a plan that Dave and I and the property owners and legal counsel looked at when we had a quick conference call a week or two ago in preparation of this meeting. And looking at that, there's looked like there were some possibilities of things we could do if there were a spill for containment outside of that. But I look closer at that, and my concern is, what are we trying to accomplish, and what is the best way to accomplish it? If there is a situation whereby we wanted to do some sort of containment, my experience in the past is when you're dealing with containing something that you're trying to prevent from getting to a resource area, we need to have a containment vessel, and we need to have an oil gas separation and a pillow to try to keep any fluid that would get in that from getting out. Now typically, from a rim to an invert is a good 3.5 feet, because you have the top of the structure, you have to have some bricking and a grate on the top of that, and then you have to have your pipe going out. So bare minimum is typically 3.5 feet. That means I got a slope from that outlet point, and that slope's got to go somewhere. The site is basically flat. It does tip towards the wetlands until we get off into the woods, and then it bottoms down towards the edge of the wetlands. To come up with a containment vessel and to have the sort of thing is going to be digging in the wetlands, in the buffer zone rather, and then trenching and creating an outlet and putting in riprap at the end of that outlet, all very, very close to the wetlands, whereby we've got empty vehicles that have less likely of being a spill that gets somewhere than the vehicles parked next door at the apartment building or in any other parking lot nearby. So I think that they have a general plan that they deal with on a daily basis in their business, and they apologize for parking close to the wetlands. They apologize, and their counsel apologizes for having not spoken with you folks first. But under the regulations, they didn't see an avenue that said that they needed to come here. They went to check on the zoning issue, and it was parking of vehicles in a parking lot that was previously permitted to have vehicles parked in it in the buffer zone. So that's what I have to present this evening. I'd like to hopefully work something out for everybody concerned that hopefully doesn't costs the property owners a lot from the standpoint, they're a very small operation, and every penny is a penny that we like to direct in a profitable,
Okay.
productive manner.
So just two comments before I open up to questions from the board. One is, we were disappointed we weren't getting a response for quite a while. We were looking for a response. We didn't get any response. And the other thing I'm just hearing tonight, it's the first time I've heard that, is the trucks are empty, that there's no storage of that. That's, to me at least, maybe other members knew that, but I don't remember hearing that. So that, I mean, that shades things a little bit. I understand maybe it's not 100% empty every day, but the design of your business sounds like they should be empty every day from what I just heard. So why don't we start, Dave, do you have questions you want to ask or start going around?
Any plans to use the building?
Yeah, the building is going to be used for their bookkeeping, their office,
How many employees will be at the building on a daily basis?
you're looking at it right here.
One person? Okay. Anyone else during the day?
No, sir.
Just truck drivers who drive? Will the truck drivers leave their cars there, pick up the truck and go to work?
He is the truck driver.
So there'll be another car there when you're off in the oil, okay. Will the oil trucks be washed and cleaned on site?
No.
Where will they be washed and cleaned?
I,
I got a buddy that's got a shop.
Okay, so, all right.
An address? No.
Will they be repaired on site?
Not unless it's needed for safety. Lights, whatnot, all that small stuff.
So,
Heavy mechanics, no.
Counselor, no activity within the buffer zone, is that what I heard you say?
no activity is proposed within the buffer zone. We're not proposing to change anything on the site.
And that's physically possible?
To not change anything on the
No,
site?
it's physically possible to have no activity in the buffer zone.
I'm not following you. Are you talking activity as in
Well,
driving around on the
If
site?
it's not within the buffer zone, then you can argue it's not within our jurisdiction.
Well, I think the activity is the parking.
Yeah, the activity,
Parking of the vehicle.
the activity from a wetland standpoint is alteration to the ground, to the site in some manner, and we're not proposing that. The activity of getting in and out of the trucks, changing bulbs, yeah, that's gonna happen.
No more questions, but my opinion will be this, they should file a notice of intent. So,
Mark?
I guess I'm not really satisfied with your explanation if something does spill there. I know it's not gonna come back completely empty every night, it's just impossible for it to work out that way.
Yep.
But if something does, what are your plans, to keep it contained?
So, right now, the plan is to use the spill kits that they have, and that would contain an area. If we wanted to try to contain it, the existing paved area, I would look at putting a bituminous berm along the right-hand side of that, the back of that pavement and back up. There's a rectangle of, I'm going to say, 80 feet from the road into the property. It lines up with the back of the building, and it's probably 20, 24 feet wide of paved area. It has a gentle slope from the right to the left towards the building, which is also towards the wetlands. If we were to put a Cape Cod berm down along between on the existing pavement, on that side, and then up across the back of the property, it would contain a large area with about a 4 to 6 inch reveal that would give area for containment. It would also contain water if there's a rainstorm. Water was going to evaporate. If there was a spill from a truck or a car parked there, that would be able to be used as spill kits to contain it within that area. To go down into the ground, I now have to get into a whole nother series of things and a lot more disturbance.
No, it isn't the perfect spot to do this. There's no
That's why it
question about
sounds like you should file a notice of intent, just what he said.
If we were to do that.
It's gotta be in the notice, there's gotta be a simple operation and maintenance plan to address just exactly what he's talking about.
About 2 years ago, that property was gonna be purchased again for
Yep.
there was somebody gonna move in there, gonna put vehicles there. And we told them they couldn't
Those-
pave anywhere close to the brook,
Well, the guy that was gonna put in the handicapped accessible entry and all that stuff, that was the
Yes,
problem.
yeah, it was a computer company.
Yeah, but the problem was where the handicapped entrance was gonna go, I think, Mark. I think that was the problem we had with it.
I didn't realize there was that much hot top in place there. I thought it was mostly gravel.
No, sir, the right-hand side of the building, I'm sorry, the right-hand side of the building has parking paved area about a third of the way back the building, about a third of the way back the building. The left-hand side starts at the road and goes all the way to the back of the building. And it's about 20, 22 feet wide, I'm guessing. And then it has a stone gravel surface right up to the property line further to the left. But there's enough space to park the 3 vehicles there as far away from possible on a paved surface. I'm not proposing that I put this berm in unless this is something that the commission would like to see. But right now, I'm having a hard time of preparing a notice of intent until I have some discussion with you folks as to what avenue you want to take, if any.
Well, typically, we don't design,
I understand that 100%.
so it should come before us completed.
For what, though?
For
Because
what
there-
you wanna do.
Well, I want to park, I want them to be able to park their vehicles where other vehicles have been permitted to park before.
That was years and years ago.
That,
Nevertheless.
yeah.
I'm
And
with
I
you.
understand that there was, I don't know about previous buyers, but I understand, because I've seen concepts for the previous owner to pave into the back of the
Right.
property, and I understand that that has not gone anywhere, and we're not proposing to do that.
I'm good for now.
Chris?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd like to see a plan, basically, a written plan that documents, a parking area for these trucks where it pulls it back from the wetlands, kind of minimize, mitigate against possible risk to the wetlands. I'd like to see a plan, written plan, that did that. And I'd be willing to take a look at like a plan that had some sort of berm that was there, again, with the same purpose, of trying to minimize that risk of some sort of contaminants getting into the wetlands. So, yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. I'm sympathetic to, local small business. Obviously, we want to be fair to the business. We want to be fair to, protecting the wetlands so we don't have an incident occur. But I'd be willing to take a, fair look at something along those lines.
Okay.
And, look at it and make a judgment call then. Those are my thoughts right now.
Thank you, Chris. Bill?
I agree with Chris, a plan, because you're talking about the water flow and that, unless we see a plan, we don't know the grades there, where it's gonna go. If we're gonna create another problem somewhere else, we're gonna move it somewhere else, so, I think, I have to agree with Chris, as far as a plan. Maybe propose a berm as just to protect the wetland area.
Sure.
Peter?
I agree with what's been said. I just want to point out that the science tells us there are some contaminants in the hydraulic oil and the transmission fluid and everything in all of our vehicles. That Chelmsford's spending how much now to try to remove some of these chemicals from our center district water? So really, the Conservation Commission rules to try to keep stuff out of the wetlands is even more important today. And maybe that's what Mark was alluding to than 10, 20 years ago, before we realized there are a lot of these nasty trace amounts of chemicals. So that's just a comment, but I agree with
Totally
the
agree.
idea of looking a little bit more formally.
Okay.
John?
I agree with everybody else, but I am gonna add, these trucks are federally inspected, correct? DOT inspected. They're inspected by the local fire department.
Yes.
Fire department comes up, puts a sticker on it,
Yep.
says the tank is safe. Okay? They regulate it once a year.
I don't remember if that one was every year or every other year.
Okay.
There's 7 different permits.
But the fire department is involved.
Yes, I already got that permit too.
You've got that permit from the fire department. As far as transmission oil leaking, power steering leaking, and things like that, that is minimal with a truck, okay? If that leaks, you don't leave with that truck. You have it towed to get it fixed, okay? But I agree with everybody else. if you can come up with a little plan and work, work with everybody here, I'm happy. Local businessman just coming in, and as you guys don't know, this stuff is inspected. Different towns back up right to rivers with oil trucks. You can drive 10 miles south of here and picture 10,000 gallon tanks parked right next to a river.
Doesn't mean it's right.
It's right, because they're inspected by the fire department, and they have the proper permits. Okay? That's all I'm going with.
Okay, so the issue is, do we let them proceed with what they're doing? Do we ask them to submit an RDA, or do we ask them to submit a notice of intent?
David, do you have a position on this? I know you've given this the most thought. You've been out there.
Sure. I'll just say first that, my primary concern has been, the potential leakage of transmission fluid and oil from the engine and whatever. We have a standard condition in our orders of conditions that, heavy equipment used in the performance of the work shall be kept as far away from the wetlands as possible when not engaged in that work. Plus it's a relatively small amount of pavement, even for just 3 trucks. Whatever does leak, I think, is going to become fairly concentrated on the pavement over time, and plus it is, quite close to the wetlands now. I don't know. I think maybe what I'm hearing is that the section of the pavement closest to the wetlands and between the wetlands and the building, maybe that actually isn't going to be planned to be used to park in anything. But maybe the way to go here is to have an RDA be filed, with no promises made that it would be a negative determination, but have an RDA file and then have our peer reviewer take a look at it. He's actually here tonight. I haven't asked him to participate in this conversation, but then we'll see if the peer reviewer agrees that whatever is being proposed, on the plan will protect the wetlands from the aforementioned concerns. Then maybe then it could be a negative determination. Or if the peer reviewer recommends that something more needs to be done in terms of more actual drainage infrastructure, then maybe it will need to be a positive.
So what's not clear to me is, are we recommending a berm as a minimum, or are we saying that the minimum is leaving it as is but have a plan?
I think we need to see a plan. I agree with
We're
those.
not recommending anything.
Specifically.
We're deciding what we want him to do based on what he said to
Okay.
us.
Okay,
So, Bruce, does that make sense to you and to your client?
it does.
Okay.
And we will proceed accordingly and as expeditiously as we can work it through our schedule.
Awesome. All right.
I just want to add one thing. He's in a highly regulated business. The DOT watches oil trucks. Everybody watches oil trucks. If you see a leak, you contain that leak and you get it fixed.
I agree,
This is-
John, but I want to know how he's going to do it on that
I
site.
understand that. What I'm saying is, he's probably got a clean record, right? But he is in a tough business.
Got it. Good point. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
It's all unfiltered.
What's that?
Bruce is going to be staying.
Yeah, oh, that's right, that's right. And it could be very,
I think you have another item in between. you and the
you
next
might
one.
even want to stay up there. No, I'm sorry, we have our liaison with the planning board is next on our agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
So, Chris, good evening.
Good evening. Chris LaValle, Planning Board Liaison to the Commission. Actually, a quick update. This week we're going to be talking a little bit more about MBTA zoning. No public hearings on that yet, just a little bit of a work discussion. talking about options that will eventually bring to the
Chris,
public.
could you, just for
Yep.
my benefit and maybe others, just quickly summarize this whole MBTA building law, what it means and what.
I will try. It is a complicated matter that keeps changing. But essentially, the state is requiring any community with a station, an MBTA station, so like Lowell, and then any adjacent communities to those communities, so Chelmsford, Billerica, any communities adjacent to Lowell. They're requiring that we create these MBTA housing zones to address the housing shortage in the state. And it's really targeting what they call the missing middle. You have the single-family homes, the larger multifamily homes, and then there's a happy medium in terms of the density. And it's 15 units per acre, I believe, is the target density. And what they're trying to do is get towns to buy into this program to create specific zoning to promote this type of housing.
What's the penalty if we don't?
They're still trying to figure that out,
So
but
there will be a penalty.
there will
if we
be
don't.
penalties. They've already stated that the state will withhold certain funding, and that list has recently grown this week of what they will withhold. And the state has already sued one town for not complying.
Do you have a deadline?
We do have a series of deadlines. The first deadline was a preliminary plan submitted to the state, which has already been submitted, mainly as a placeholder that we have a process. The main deadline that we're working towards is December of 2024, I believe. And our target is to bring some zoning proposals to town meeting in the spring of 2024. As our first shot at passing something. And then if it doesn't pass at that town meeting, we'll revise and then bring it again to the fall town meeting to try and meet that deadline.
Good for you.
We're going to be doing a significant amount of outreach.
You're gonna have time to do anything else?
No. Some of the proposed areas are near wetlands or include wetlands. So that also calculates into how much buildable land is part of the zone. And so we're looking at different areas around town to see what might make sense. And then we're going to be proposing a number of options to the public for input on specific areas.
Has to be within a certain distance of MBTA lines or something? Or?
That is a little bit unclear. I don't think it has to be on a line. Local lines, I'm not sure if it counts or not, but we're looking at the bus lines within town as well.
Okay.
How close is this gonna mirror like a 40B? And like conservation and planning? I understand 15 units per acre, but there's always a lot that 40B is able to get past.
40P was pretty unrestrictive, let's put it that way, in terms of conservation.
Right.
They could override
Yeah.
almost all the conservation regs.
Right.
This is still an evolving area. For example, this past week, the state did announce that prior to this week, it was expected to be all residential units. This week, they did announce that they're going to allow the first floor being commercial.
It's like an overlay almost?
We're trying to figure out if it makes sense to do no overlay
Like
or
distribution
underlying
centers?
zoning. What's that?
You mean like distribution centers?
I guess the final question I have is, since we're surrounded by north and south by
Yeah.
MBTA stations, are we like a prime candidate, Chelmsford?
Well, it doesn't matter if we're included in one, we're part of the program. So it doesn't matter
Is
if
the
we're part
quid
of
pro
two
quo
areas.
that they fix the MBTA first?
No. That is not part of
I'm not winning this one at all, am I?
That question has come up before already. So just wanted to make you aware that you might ask to be involved in some feedback because part of the zoning that we're going to have to create includes setbacks and restrictions that might pull areas of buildability away from the wetlands. So we'll be asking for some feedback. NEMCOG has been working closely with us to at least get some initial designs and plans ready.
Is the location to the Lowell MBTA station, is that the town of Chelmsford as opposed to the Concord side of Chelmsford or East Chelmsford?
If we're a community that's adjacent to any MBA.
So it's the community, it's not the location within Chelmsford?
Correct.
I got you.
Correct.
So that'd be Berica, Chelmsford?
No,
Well,
I mean,
Berica
it-
has a station and Lowell
It
has
means
a
Lowell
you-
has
you-
a station.
We're touching
right.
them both, so
And
we're.
and it means
But
you
that's
could
in
have
Chelmsford.
this housing project, however, could be on the Carlisle line or on the East Chelmsford
The
line.
East Chelmsford
and-
side.
And still meet
Yeah.
Yeah.
the requirement.
There's no, as far as I know, there's no restrictions as to how close or far you have to be to these stations. But I did read an article today that one town was proposing within a certain distance to their stations to stay within the spirit of the law. But as far as I know, there are no mandates for that yet.
Yeah.
And Chris,
But like I said, it is changing.
and it's about 100 acres that you're looking for?
I think it's somewhere around 90 or 100. I don't
Is
remember.
that why we're
Parcel.
buying is that why we're
remember?
buying the coolest property?
90, is it 90 acres total?
It's only 25.
Well,
30,
that's close enough.
35.
Yeah, it's 100.
Is that why we're buying the coolest property this fall?
Don't know.
I'm serious.
I don't know.
Okay, you haven't
It's,
heard.
I don't think that one's part of our area. But we've discussed a number of options,
Okay.
UMass campus, Riverneck, UPS site. There are a number of different sites that we're
Yep.
looking at.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask him a question about
Yes, you may.
an item that we've been discussing on our agenda? Is that kosher? Because it's not, I mean, I want to ask him a question on 270. Can I do that?
I think David's gonna do an update.
No, I understand, but since he's
Yeah.
planning board and we're
Sure.
conservation, and it's not,
I think that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem.
is planning board going to do anything more about 270, or have you done what you had to do?
That
Did you
topic is
reopen the
on our
hearing?
agenda for tomorrow to discuss options.
Is an option to reopen the hearing? Or is that
We
not?
don't know yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've, Evan has submitted has asked town council to provide feedback on our options. There is a letter that was submitted, it's attached to our agenda for tomorrow, with the town council's feedback, and we'll
You
talk
guys are
about
put in a
options tomorrow.
tough situation. It's too bad.
So it'll be a topic of discussion tomorrow.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, so we're done with the first part of the first one, okay.
Could, under this section, could I just remind everybody, I sent the link to Carlisle's plan for the Cranberry Bog. You gotta read it. Don't read the notice of intent, but read the attachments to it. It's a big project, 1.5 million square feet of reclamation. And you know it's gonna affect us at some point, so we have to think about how do we get involved in the discussion, so just read it.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda, we have the notice of intent for Chelmsford Lumber at 201 and 203 Boston Road. Do we have an announcement?
We have a legal notice, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Chelmsford Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 187. The Chelmsford Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing in room 204 at the town offices on Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, at 7 p.m. to consider the notice of intent filed by property owner Chelmsford Lumber Company, Inc., for proposed work within 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands at 201 and 203 Boston Road, further identified as Assessors Map 112/Block 425/lots 1 and 2. Mr. Chairman.
So before
Thank you.
we begin, Mr. Chairman, the legal notice that was sent to the newspaper had an error in it. It said Boston Post Road, it's Boston Road. So the legal notice is gonna have to be republished. I don't think that's gonna be an issue. Certainly go ahead and open the hearing, and Bruce can make the presentation. I think the hearing's likely gonna have to be continued in any case, so just
Okay.
wanted to let people know.
Thank you for letting us know. Okay. You look familiar.
I'm still Bruce Ringwald, still from GPR. This evening now representing Chelmsford Lumber at 201 and 203 Boston Road. Gosh, it was quite some time ago when I got involved with this portion of the project, and I met several of you out on site on an early Saturday morning, post a rain, so we got to really see what happens on the property. Does a pointer work on this screen?
I don't know.
Nope, does not. All right.
That's
Well,
right.
Dave, if you could move that, I guess I gotta move this so I can be heard. If you could move that over to the locus for just a moment.
Okay.
Perfect, that'd be awesome. So, Boston Road is, on the right-hand side of the image as you're looking at that. And, Hazen Road is, across the top. If you, it's the colors I've put on here just to help us figure out where we're at and what's going on. But the blue is the edge of the wetlands that have been recently, delineated. Then the green is the edge, one of the buffers, 50-foot buffer, and the pink, the outer portion of it is the 100-foot buffer. And if you move us back across, Dave, that would be of help. Okay, so it's hard to see here, but where the stippling stops is the edge of the lawn. And if I can run over here for a minute, this is the pavement here. This is the gravel where there's material stored on the gravel. This is the edge of the big storage building. We all met over here, kind of walked across this area. This is the area of where the riprap is currently off the edge of the pavement. So, having said that, this is a notice of intent following up an RDA that was filed by the applicant without our assistance. And then they were asked to file a notice of intent to address the runoff. When we were out there, we saw there were, the area had been loamed and seeded between the parking and the gravel surface and the edge of wetlands. That what was a meadow was loamed and seeded. Without a curb there, there had been a fair amount of erosion and a number of rills that had occurred through that area, and it washed the fines down towards the wetland edge, which is at the lower edge of the page here. There is no new impervious area on the site. This is a thing where they repaved the first portion of the property. The gravel was something that was previously approved to be there and to be used for storage, but not to have a pavement done on there, and that was back with the prior owner of the property. When we met on the site, we saw from that heavy rain, I think we had close to 3 inches the night before, as reported by you folks, because you were here. I was north of the location, but you could see a watermark on the new Cape Cod berm, and it was very clear that where that area of riprap is was where the water was discharging off of the paved and gravel surfaces at the most concentration and headed towards the wetlands, and it had created a bit of erosion, and the applicant, in an attempt to address that, had put in some heavy, large riprap in that area. The water prior to that Cape Cod berm had since eroded around that edge, and we talked about enlarging that, which is the dark line around that area, to expand that area in that location. Now, expanding, I want to talk about that area first, and then I'll get on to the rest of the site. Expanding that area in that location is to rectify the erosion that's occurred there, and we believe that there'll be very limited overflow that will happen in that area, except for maybe in the springtime when we have snow piled up that might block some of the water from flowing along that curb. It's very clear that the water follows along that curb and it discharges along the edge of the gravel. And at the very edge of the gravel, which would be the edge of the kind of regular snake that heads up off to the left-hand side of the screen as you look at it, at that point, just prior to that point, there was fines on the ground when we were there where the water had been coming before it kind of took a left-hand turn and headed towards the wetland line. What our proposal is, the curb went back on. There was a curb there before, and the curb was doing a great job once upon a time. The curb was put back on just prior to our site visit back in June, I think it was. The proposal that we're proposing here is because there's no new impervious area, we're trying to take care of the runoff from the site to remove as much TSS as possible. We're in a situation where it's a redevelopment. It was a repaving of an existing paved area, so there's no new impervious area. And under the redevelopment guidelines, it's to the extent practical that you do the best you can for the property to address removing TSS, which is what we've proposed here. Now, typically, and much of this area is in a Zone 2 watershed area, Zone 2 protection area. And so typically what you want to do is do what you can to remove as much total suspended solid as possible. Typically, one of those things is a stone filter strip along the edge of pavement. This is typically a foot wide and a couple feet deep. And it is then you go for, that's going to catch the bulk of your runoffs from your first flush of the rain, and that's going to settle into that stone, and then you're going to have runoff over a vegetative area towards the wetlands. The Wetlands Protection Act says 25 feet gives you a 10% removal. 50 feet of vegetative buffer gives you 45% removal of TSS. The goal obviously is to hit 80. What we've proposed here is a large filter strip. It's a slope, and you see a series of lines. The upper portion of it is going to be loam and seed on a slope coming down, and then a level spot, and then a slight slope coming up. And Dave, if you can slide that picture down, above it is a detail. And now you're going to want to go to slide the whole image to the left a little bit. Perfect. And now maybe jump just a whisker. Perfect. This area here is the energy dissipator, and this is a cross section of the swale that I'm talking about, this recharge. Here's the edge of the gravel right now, sloped, 3 foot wide, says a foot deep below the wrap, so it's about 1.5 feet deep, and then it comes back up to a minimum of 3 inches, so it has some detention in there. So the energy dissipator would go at the end of the Cape Cod berm on the paved area. So the detail kind of looks familiar to you if you're looking at plans a lot. It's essentially a handicap ramp kind of slopes that we have in here, whereby the water is falling along this curb, but we're going to have it drop away from the curb and come the pavement away, and from the gravel up gradient down in, and then come into this lower portion of that recharge chamber. This is going to allow us to get the water into there and go into this recharge chamber. And this recharge chamber, or this, similar to the drip edge that's typically much smaller, we've made for this whole length. And it is level, and will have a level edge on the down gradient side, so that on the down gradient side, As this thing fills up and gets the first flush into this trench, then it overflow, and then it'll have at least, because the furthest portion, the closest portion is 50 feet, and then it's further at other places, 50 feet of vegetative area to get down to it. Now that vegetative area currently, as we discussed, has got a bunch of rills in it. And it also has, Dave, if you can go back up to the plan image, please. Super, thank you very much. There's an existing erosion control barrier, which is this orange line in through here, that is totally in disrepair.
That's the wattle.
That's the wattle that's there, and I think there's a little bit of silt fence that's kind of up and down in places. This is a proposed barrier that we have across in here, which would be a silt fence and a wattle together. Upgrading of that, we wish to top dress the loam, fill in the rills, seed it, and get that vegetation reestablished. We've asked for a waiver because part of that, including that existing buffer, is in your 25-foot no disturb area. It's been disturbed, obviously. There's the buffer, the wattle that's there and everything. We're trying to make this thing a better scenario in here. So now we've got the water going all the way over to that farther strip, which is the piece that we were just talking about, I was trying to explain. And then it sits in there, so we're getting some sediment, some detention time. We've not calculated the detention time because I've got no impervious area. I have no requirement to recharge a particular amount of water because I have no impervious area, so 0 times the factor gets me 0. So we're trying to come up with the best scenario with the least amount of disturbance in the buffer zone and maintain as much of that buffer zone as vegetative strip as possible. So that's the proposal to treat in this area and to top dress this area that's eroded. They've already had the berm put back in place that was once upon a time there. Because we are a commercial site, we have to fit into the stormwater standards. Because of that, there are these 10 standards that you're all well aware of that we need to address. And what we've done is we've incorporated the checklist in our application, as well as a long-term pollution prevention and stormwater operation and maintenance plan, which talks about how to maintain these particular things that I've just described over the years and what needs to be done with that. So as I go through the standards of the things that need to be happening, the first standard is addressing, no new stormwater conveyances. We don't have any new stormwater conveyances. The water was flowing to a curb and then overland flow. The water's now flowing to a curb, and we're trying to give it a chance to get better recharge and collect some of that total suspended solid before discharging. Stormwater management systems shall be designed so that the post-development peak discharge rates do not exceed the pre-construction. So, again, I've got no new area, there's no new water that's coming, it's the same water hitting. We're just trying to do a better job of treating it. Loss of annual recharge to the groundwater. No new areas of impervious. We're trying to recharge it, some set, but we're trying to clean the water of the suspended solids that will come off of the gravel parking and the paved parking before it has a chance to head out into the wetlands. Stormwater management systems shall be designed to remove 80% of the annual post-construction total suspended solids. Again, under the redevelopment portion, to the extent practical. Now, we looked at this and we looked at ideas, and there is a possibility of getting a higher percentage removed, but it's going to mean a much more disturbance in this area of the buffer zone and much work a lot closer to the buffer zone. And our feeling is that we're going to be able to do a better job of treating it with least disturbance to the buffer zone and least disturbance to the site. Get the project back up and running on a quicker basis. 5 is lands the use of higher potential pollutant loads, LUPLs. We don't have that. We don't meet that category. This is a lumber storage yard and distribution facility. It doesn't qualify as a LUPL. Number 6, stormwater discharges within a Zone 2 or an IWPA, an interim wellhead protection area, to supply the best removal of TSS and stormwater discharges on the site. We believe this proposal does that, and I've gone through that a couple times. Number 7 is a redevelopment project is required to meet the stormwater standards only to the maximum extent practical. That's what we've been talking about. Standards 2, 3, and the pretreatment structures, management, standards 4, 5, and 6. Existing stormwater discharges shall comply with standard 1 only to the maximum extent practicable. So I think, again, we've gone through that and we've done this. A plan to control the construction-related impacts, including erosion, sediment, and other pollutants during construction. We have that with the erosion control barrier. We have that with the berm that has been installed on the pavement. And we believe we have that with this enlarged infiltration trench. And next to last, is a long-term operation and maintenance plan. We've submitted that with the package. And an illicit discharge to the stormwater management system. We have no illicit discharges. It's the same discharge it's always been. It was doing sheet flow in an interim stage that shouldn't have happened, but did. And that created the biggest problem and the biggest erosion. We've tried to address that with what we have proposed. I had some conversation with David a couple weeks back or a week or so back, asking for a letter explaining what I just said. If you want that, we can prepare that. Being what everything is, we just didn't have time to generate that together, so I've kind of verbally explained it. Hopefully it's on a recorded record now. But that's what we have for the site, and I turn it over to you folks for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Why don't we ask the commission if we have questions? John, what do you?
Carl.
Okay, yeah, sure, David.
So, Bruce, I got calls from 3 abutters who told me that, and I verified it in the abutter notification letter that you provided with the notice of intent, that says the project description there is construction of a new access road. So that's got to be a mistake.
It's got to be a mistake.
Must
Yeah.
have been the same letter that was used from another.
Yeah.
somewhere.
No access roads proposed.
Okay. The
Does
other.
that mean that abutters have to be re-notified?
No.
No. They got notification of this, so.
So the other issue is that our peer reviewer, and the commission voted to require peer review at the last meeting for this particular filing. Peer reviewer, and he's here tonight, Bob Hartzell from CEI, has advised that a stormwater report needs to be included with the filing, and has not been. And Bruce says he doesn't think one is required, so maybe, Bruce, you could explain why you don't think one is required, and then we can ask Mr. Hartzell to tell us why he thinks so.
Okay.
Certainly. Back to the basis that there's no new impervious area. So my pre versus my post is going to look exactly the same in either case. And so doing a calculation of that seems futile in that the pre and the posts are going to come out to be the same. I'm going to have a little bit less because I have created this slight detention, but we're not taking credit for detention time because we're looking at it from the standpoint of doing the best treatment of the runoff water. So I don't know what doing a hydraulic study is going to benefit anybody for. You know, again, under redevelopment, I don't see where it's a necessary need.
Okay, so why don't we go to the peer review?
Bob? Bob, you're there?
Thought somebody was coming to the podium. I was getting ready to move.
On Zoom.
No, I'm sorry, I just realized I was on
Okay, sorry.
So I think this is.
Can you just state your name first, please?
Well, yes, of course. Bob Hartzell, Comprehensive Environmental.
Thank you.
So I think to some extent, this is a pretty simple administrative question, and then to a lesser extent, it's a technical question. On the administrative end, the question of whether or not a stormwater report is required is answered pretty clearly in the Massachusetts Stormwater Standards. What was submitted with the notice of intent, as Mr. Ringwald stated, is the stormwater checklist. And the checklist is not intended and really can't be used as a substitute for the stormwater report. It's actually stated on the checklist itself that it's there both to aid reviewers to make sure that all the required components of a stormwater report are included, and also to aid the applicant to make sure that they haven't missed anything. But it's not meant to be a substitute. It's there just as a quick checklist, as the name would imply. So simply on an administrative level, a stormwater report is a required piece of the notice of intent. Now, to the last comment Mr. Ringwald made about a hydraulic study, the stormwater report doesn't necessarily have to be a hydraulic study. What it does have to do is provide a narrative description, 1 through 10, through each of the stormwater standards. And there's plenty of opportunity. There are plenty of cases where a particular project may have or may not be applicable. So one or multiple of the stormwater standards may not apply to that project, in which case it's the responsibility of the applicant to simply provide a narrative description of why it's not applicable. And that happens all the time. And sometimes it's as simple as one sentence. But it's up to the applicant to decide what's an adequate, description of why that standard doesn't apply. So I think that a simple narrative report would allow for the applicant at the time to do that, and it would allow the peer reviewer a chance to review that narrative and information and decide if there's anything else that's needed to complete the review. On the technical end of things, I would, I guess, disagree. I'll just give one example because similar to the Commission's previous comment about not being in the role of being a designer, I don't think it's appropriate for the peer reviewer to, sort of provide the content of what they'll be reviewing. But just as one example, Standard 1 is not just about no new outfalls when it says no new discharge of untreated stormwater to wetlands. There's a specific requirement, and the handbook, the stormwater handbook, does provide guidance on the calculations that you need for peak discharge and erosion potential to show that you're going to be avoiding erosive flows at outlets. So the site hydraulics and the flow patterns have been changed. So as a result, those calculations are needed to support the idea that you won't have erosive flows at the outlet. And that may be a very simple calculation, but it's something that just needs to be required so that it can be reviewed and say that you've checked off Standard 1. That's just an example. So I think, that I probably could leave my comments there, and if there's any other questions from the Commission, I'm happy to go into more detail.
I would also just remind the Commission that this is proposing discharge into a Zone 2 critical area.
Yeah, good reminder, thank you.
So I don't know, Mr. Chairman, whether I think the Commission should take a formal vote on whether to require a stormwater report. I don't know if the Commission wants to do that now or after further discussion.
Let's see what, Bruce, if you have a quick response to what you heard, or?
I think I gave this verbal
Okay.
report this evening.
Yep.
And as I mentioned at the end of it, I can provide it in a written format. I think we've addressed the issues.
All right, so the question before us is, do we want to follow the guidance of the peer review and request a stormwater report? So I'm open to conversation or discussion. Anybody want to jump in with a, Chris, yeah?
I think yes. I think a narrative could be helpful, and I see value to that. So yes, that's my answer.
Okay. Mark?
I agree with Chris.
Yeah.
Since it is in a Zone 2 area, I want that to be it.
Yep.
No.
Dave?
Pass.
It's a simple task for.
Yeah, okay. Peter?
I agree because this addresses a lot of the questions that I had, so it'll avoid me having to throw them at you.
Well,
And I changed my vote to yes.
We definitely can't.
if you have questions that are above and beyond that, I'd love to hear them, just make sure I get them answered for you. But I don't want to do it in the middle of your
Get there
vote.
at a moment, maybe. John, any comment on
I have
this
no
particular?
comment.
Yeah, okay, so I'll take a motion then to require this.
I make a
Second.
motion, Mr. Chairman, that we get the stormwater report narrative submitted from the applicant to us to enable our peer reviewer to review that and provide any comments or feedback to the commission.
We have a motion from Chris,
Second.
second from Bill. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so,
Understood.
you've heard the, you've heard the mandate. Thank you. Now, do we have more questions? I guess we could ask some more questions here if we have any other commentary. Peter, you indicated you had,
Well, I need to apologize, I missed the site walk, but we're talking about runoff from the parking lot and the warehouse, right?
Yep.
That's correct. The warehouse has gutters, and it has several downspouts which discharge onto the pavement.
Right.
And that comes across the pavement. The portion that is planned north of this diversion piece is gravel. So that goes from the building to the pavement to the gravel and then to this piece that we have set up to help control the water.
I mean, I have seen it. And just one other quick question. David, maybe you can help me, as a relatively new member of this commission. When was the warehouse built, and were there any requirements at that time for the roof drainage?
That I do not know.
It's on the 2004 aerial photo. I think it's been, I'm trying to remember. You know, John, it's been
Yeah,
there a
it's been
while,
there a
right?
while.
It's been there some time.
Sometime.
Yeah. So that's just a question I have. We can talk offline, but I'm curious.
It's always been a paved area, emptying into a pasture.
Yeah. My question is the roof drain.
That's what it's been.
Yeah, my question is the roof drain.
Yeah, right.
So-
Okay.
So Peter, you did have a concern looking at some of the aerials going back 5 years or so, that maybe some more trees were cleared in the wetlands and or buffer zone.
Well, that is true.
Does that, would you, I have asked CEI to include in their proposal a review of aerial photos going
Right.
back 5 years.
Yeah,
To look at that question, is that something you
I
saw?
saw that, and I would appreciate that. And then my other real question, and again, forgive me for not, I'm probably just out of date here, but my real question is, since the wetland's been altered, is there anything that this commission would like to ask Chelmsford Lumber to do? Not restore the wetland, but maybe there's some middle ground
Well,
besides just lawn.
Review of the wetland delineation is included in the proposal as well. And I think when wetland delineations are reviewed, I think it's pretty standard to, if it looks like there's been some recent alterations, to make a record of that.
Yeah, and again, I just want to underscore what I'm thinking, and you already said this. It is I don't know, it's the endangered species habitat, and it's on the priority, help me out with the right words, habitat, the biomap. And it's not considered the Zone 2 wellhead according to our town GIS, but it's very close. So that's all. It's not just a little puddle behind a lumber yard. It's actually part of a big watershed that's been considered by the state, and I think the town, as important. So it's
Yes.
worth thinking about.
thank you, Peter. Bruce, do you
Mr. Chair,
have a
just
response?
to be clear, a couple things. We are not in an endangered species zone. We're not in a habitat zone. We are in a Zone 2, the IWPA, it's a map Zone 2.
Right.
So that is a definite, and to my knowledge, there's been no alteration to the wetlands. Now, there were some trees and overgrown and invasive vegetation as well that were in and around the former house. There was a garage building, an old pool that wasn't used. Those things were removed prior to our involvement. And I believe that those were something that had been addressed before. My understanding from when I got involved, from the site walk and some discussions with Dave, was that the big concern was the erosion that was occurring and stopping that erosion from occurring in the immediate buffer zone, the former meadow that had been, kind of cleaned up, if you will. So that is where we did lose some vegetation over closer to the house.
But this hearing's not about that site.
Well, it's about that site. That's part of the property. But I didn't address anything about the trees or that vegetation being removed because I thought that was previously addressed in your meetings with the applicant before this. I thought this was more about
That's right.
the issue, oh good, now I don't know how to spell his name. The issue of the runoff and controlling it and doing what we can under the Stormwater Management Act and the Massachusetts Stormwater Guidelines.
Okay, so, do we have more questions here?
The work that's being
anyone else?
proposed is being done on 203 or 201 and 203?
The latter, 201 and 203.
And how much of the 25-foot no disturbance would you need to infringe on?
I don't have an actual square footage. It's primarily this area right in here, where there is existing erosion control, where we propose new erosion control and pull that back. So this pink line is the 25-foot no disturb, the yellow is the 30-foot, 50 is all the way out here. As you can
But
see,
you're
we're
saying
outside of
that no disturb area has been disturbed anyhow?
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
And it was formerly the pasture.
This proposal is catching all of the runoff from both sides of the roof?
It's
The building?
catching anything that is draining in this direction from that paved surface
Draining
in the
on the
building.
other side of the building?
I'm not
That's a
certain.
high-
I believe it
it's a higher
eventually makes it
elevation.
this way. It is a higher elevation.
So it has to go down to where you're proposing work.
That's correct.
So your proposed work is catching the runoff for all of the building and all
much
of
all the pavement.
all of the asphalt area.
And the gravel as well, sir.
And is the water running off equally, or is it coming off one side of this more than the other?
Pretty much equally. I mean, it's a pretty gentle slope across that whole surface towards the wetlands from Hazen Road, or the Hazen Road and the abutters, if you will, towards Boston Road. What's happening is when it hits that curb, it's now directed to, I guess that would be to the east, to the west, connected to the west.
More of the wetlands are to the lower right, the southeast corner of that picture there, correct?
More of the wetlands are over here, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And
So,
this is all being stopped now by that curb
but your hand,
and
but you're,
directing the water into
but
this.
of all the, but you're treating the runoff in an equal way, so it's flowing equally off the site into the wetlands. It's not going to one part of the wetlands more than another.
It is now going more
No, I mean.
to the south,
in your proposal,
southwestern,
in your
yes.
proposal.
In our proposal to the
Going more
southwest.
to the southeast,
Southwest,
which is where the arrow
the
is?
lower left corner.
The lower left.
More, the water from this site
Yeah.
is hitting this curb, coming to here.
Where's the
and then
building?
discharging this way.
Where's the building?
Up top.
Building is up here.
Okay. So that makes sense to have more runoff go to the southwest because there's more wetlands down there.
I'm looking at it, there's wetlands across the whole
Yeah,
southern
but
edge.
If I
sir.
look at, if I look at our GIS, there's a lot more
There's a
wet.
thicker band of wetlands, yes, if that's what
all
you
I
mean,
have.
yes. There's definitely a thicker band there.
That's all I have.
Mark, do you have anything? Anything more?
All those calculations were done from Hazen Road, and the runoff comes from Hazen Road onto the property too?
Yes. Well, we didn't do any calculations because that water's coming there now, so I'm not, the pre versus the post is what was happening either way.
But how confident are you gonna be in a 100-year storm that's gonna work adequately?
In a 100-year storm, this
Heaven knows every
thing
few
is
days.
gonna get water and it's gonna overtop, but it's gonna have that couple 100 foot of level area to disperse evenly over established vegetation for greater than 50 feet, and on the further end, greater than 100 feet before it gets to the wetlands. So it's providing the best care that it can. We're not trying to take we have 5,000 square feet of impervious area, and we've just added another 5. Now we have 10,000 square feet, and we're trying to make up for that difference. What we have for disturbed impervious area, we have for disturbed impervious area. That's not changing. We're trying to make it a better scenario. That's something that happened before us, and we're trying to just make it a better scenario, sir. We're trying to take out as much TSS without doing more disturbance to your buffer zone to get you the best results.
So you're confident this will perform adequately throughout the years?
Yes. That's why we have the stormwater maintenance, program, the long-term operation and maintenance program,
Okay.
which we never did in the past, Those were things that didn't happen. We did closed drainage systems. We put them into basins. They're all full of trees. Good luck finding them right now.
Anything else, Mark?
No.
Chris, anything else?
No, I mean, I'm good. I just want to, like the man says, I want to see things better.
Yep. Bill, anything else?
Quick question.
Sure.
You said this, if you did some additional work in the buffer area, you can increase the TSS removal and get it up towards the 80%, right?
Yep.
What work would that what would you do to do that?
We'd basically be looking at making a bigger detention basin, making a detention basin type scenario, a bigger infiltration area, and probably some other BMPs, put in a structure. But now here goes the same conversation that we had earlier. When you put in a structure, now we're digging. Now we've got a different thing. Now I got to have a discharge pipe that's lower. It's going to be closer to the wetlands. We have some change in grade there, but not a lot.
Right.
So now I've got a discharge point that's, 25 feet, 10 feet, some number away from the wetlands.
Yeah, I'm not proposing to do that. I just want.
No, I
What
understand, but I just want to,
Yes.
there's a give and a take to both
I
of
was
them.
out there on the sidewalk with some of us, and that day after the rain.
Oh, yeah.
And it really pretty much showed you in detail what happened there.
100%.
So what you propose, you're increasing that riprap area, right? With the
Increasing
beginning of
that, yep.
Yeah. So what you propose, and you could see it on the ground, how everything worked.
Yeah.
And I think what you're proposing is what's needed there, and it makes the most sense.
I think so too. And this, if you remember, this is similar to what I talked about that morning.
Yeah, it is.
But this is better, bigger, and I think going to do a better job.
Right.
And
Yeah,
we
no,
kicked it
I-
around in the office and we said, this is a better approach.
Yep.
Anything else?
No.
Peter, anything
And
else?
on paper.
John, anything else?
No, and it's
Yeah,
on
okay.
paper.
Okay,
Been a
so,
long time coming,
yep,
but I think they
Yeah,
got a good
exactly.
handle on
And
it.
I apologize for that. That wasn't the applicant's issue. That was more my schedule and workload issue to, get a good product to you, but get it to you so that it had answers.
so I think you've heard, we have some good comments, some good questions. We think you're right on the right track. Looking for a stormwater report. Is there anything else other than, obviously, this will be continued?
You have to continue because of the
Yeah.
notice, right?
Yep. And also,
well,
I mean,
yes,
that's an administrative
Right.
reason, but I think getting the storm.
Administrative and your request for the report.
Yeah.
And we'll get that to you.
And that report needs to be able to be reviewed by our peer review.
Well, yes, and in fact, he really needs the report to be able to write a proposal. He hasn't even been able to draft a proposal yet.
Okay.
So once he gets the report, he can do that, and then, yeah, it's gonna.
So our next meeting is 3 weeks, I think,
3
if I
weeks.
remember. It may not, that may be even stretching it to me. I don't know. You guys-
We'll do our best to try to get it to you right away so that your agent can have time your agent and your consultant can have time to review it, and hopefully we'll have 5 minutes to rebut if
If we can make that
necessary.
work, then that would be,
Could I ask one more
Yeah.
question?
sure.
Sir,
Yes,
how close is the proposed construction to the corner of the building? What's the closest distance between the corner of the building and your proposed work?
this is the line of the building right here. So if this is 50 feet, this corner right here is 50 feet away.
Because right now, you're storing materials there. You're gonna need a snowplow there in the wintertime.
There's
To
space
get-
for all that. Materials are stored in here, so that
So are
the
you
trucks
gonna,
can drive by.
are you gonna end up pushing snow into this proposed
No.
area? Or one of the requirements, if we get to it, should be to keep snow removal away from this.
Away from that, and I want to have it so that this end is plowed clear,
Thank you.
so that the water can flow along this curb and into that.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we continue this meeting to September 12th, our next meeting.
Motion by Chris. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Dave. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. So, Bruce, thank you very much for your presentation. I think we're on the right track. Appreciate your time on both of your events tonight. Both of your
Thank you
your
all for
agenda
your
items.
time
All
and
right.
your input.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, thanks to our peer review.
Have a good night.
All right. Next on the agenda, we have the 270 Billerica Road. And as I understand it from a recent email this afternoon, that they're requesting a continuance. And David, you have an update.
Yes, and the reason for the continuance is that the peer review is nowhere being ready yet, it's barely even started. So I think that's the primary purpose of the request for the continuance. I'm also working with the applicant's representatives on the issue of redoing the soil testing.
Redoing what, Dave? I'm sorry.